My name is Steve Wenzel, and I'm honored to provide the welcome to all of you tonight to the forum, the Rosenmeier Forum. For those of you that are here, I welcome you, and also for those who are watching on our streaming link to hear the issues relating to housing facing north central Minnesota and the Brainerd Lakes region. The Rosenmeier Forum was established in 1988 under the leadership of then CLC's president, Sally Inney. The Rosenmeier Center on State and Local Government was created to honor the legacy of State Senator Gordon Rosenmeier from Little Falls, who represented Crow Wing and Morrison counties in the Minnesota State Senate for 30 years. Senator Rosenmeier was a true visionary who was able to provide vision on some of the urgently needed projects of that day. He was a principled conservative whose government motto was, "That government which governs least governs best of all." But Rosenmeier was a visionary who in 1967 created in Minnesota the first state pollution control agency in the nation. And President Richard Nixon followed 3 years later, using the Minnesota law as its model for the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency for the federal government. Rosenmeier also created the Minnesota Department of Human Rights to support the civil rights of Minnesota's citizenry. And he created a pension system for public employees that focused on the permanent solvency of that system by using bonds instead of stocks for its foundation. Rosenmeier's vision and intellect, his leadership and ability provided the foundation of a strong state government here in Minnesota that truly works. I also want to thank at this time our own president of Central Lakes College, Hera Charlier, who on behalf of the Rosenmeier board, we thank her for the strong support she gives to the Rosenmeier Center for State and Local Government. I will now call on Becky Twomley, our board member, our Rosenmeier board member, who will introduce our two speakers on the Housing Forum. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for joining in this conversation about the state of housing in Minnesota. The mission of the Rosenmeier Center is to educate and encourage participation of the public in effective government and political processes. According to Housing First Minnesota, the current deficit in housing is over 100,000 units and affects every county in Minnesota. Lack of affordable housing impacts families, businesses, and neighborhoods, really all areas of community life. Diverse solutions to our housing needs are needed, and affordable homes in varieties of shapes and sizes, policy changes, and funding from state and local government are just part of the answer. Tonight we have two speakers with a depth of experience and knowledge around these issues. First, we'll hear from Jennifer Bergman. Jennifer is the Director of Local Government Housing Programs with Minnesota Housing. This is a new department recently created to administer state housing programs targeted for local governments. Jennifer has a long history working with housing, government, and nonprofits, including past director of the Brainerd HRA and as the Brainerd City Administrator. Our second speaker, Eric Charpentier, is the Executive Director of the local HRA, the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. The HRA provides affordable housing and redevelopment opportunities throughout Brainerd and all of Crow Wing County. Eric has a background in economics and participates in several nonprofit boards in the Brainerd Lakes area. We look forward to learning how these organizations work together to ensure a growing and thriving community. After the presentations, there'll be an opportunity for questions. Raise your hand and someone will come around with a microphone. We ask that you keep your questions brief so that we can get to everyone. Let's give the speakers a big round of applause and welcome Jennifer and Eric.
Thank you, Becky. And thank you for the invitation to come here tonight and talk about housing and talk about housing solutions. Interestingly enough, I moved to the Brainerd Lakes area in June of 2011, and I believe it was either in September or October of that year, I participated in a Rosenmeier forum. So life comes full circle. Here I am back again. It is great to see friendly faces in the audience, and thank you. And I'm really looking forward to the questions and answer section. So I'm going to spend probably about 20 minutes talking about Minnesota Housing. I'm going to talk about the agency, and then I'm going to talk specifically about the local government housing programs. So I always like to start out with just an overview of the agency and why we're here. Housing impacts Minnesotans of all backgrounds in all corners of the state, and housing touches all areas of life, education, health, jobs, and many more, as Becky mentioned. The vision of Minnesota Housing is a big, audacious goal, and that's that all Minnesotans live and thrive in a stable, safe, and accessible home they can afford in a community of their choice. And our mission is that housing is foundational to a full life and a thriving state, so we equitably collaborate with individuals, communities, and partners to create, preserve, and finance housing that is affordable. 2023 was a very big year for housing and for Minnesotans. In 2023, the state adopted a budget of $1.3 billion that was dedicated to housing resources across the state. Minnesota Housing serves a bunch of different areas. We do rental and homeownership, we do new construction and preservation, deeply affordable housing and market rate housing in greater Minnesota, rental assistance, down payment assistance, manufactured homes, and modular homes. Next slide, please. So our delivery process at Minnesota Housing is our agency has resources that are available through RFPs and through funding resources. Those funds are then delivered to community organizations, developers, service providers, lenders, tribal and local units of government, which then is delivered to Minnesotans. So what does Minnesota Housing do? We finance and we fund, as I've mentioned. We have 3 outward or public-facing departments. Traditionally, Minnesota Housing has always been structured in a multifamily and in a single-family public-facing departments. Our multifamily does affordable rental housing, creation and preservation, also rental assistance, operating subsidies, and a number of different homeless prevention programs. On the single-family side of our agency, we do home improvement, rehab loans, affordable single-family development, manufactured home acquisition and infrastructure improvements, as well as some counseling activities for those who want to become first-time home buyers. What we don't do is Minnesota Housing does not build or develop housing. We don't own properties. We don't regulate housing or development or set local controls. That's done by your local units of government. And we don't administer the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program, which I'm sure Eric will be talking about. So as I mentioned, in 2023, the agency received $1.3 billion in funding for new housing programs. That was 15 new programs that were created out of that $1.3 billion. Of those funds, 6 programs were new to the agency and were geared towards local units of government. So the agency created a new department called the Local Government Housing Programs Department. I was hired in November of 2023 to begin to build out that department so that we could start to roll out these incredibly important programs. To date, we have 4 staff members, including myself. So as I mentioned, the $1.3 billion created these basically 5 new programs. One is kind of an umbrella. I'm going to talk about each one of these programs, but I always think it's really interesting to see the funds that have been allocated to this. We have the Bring It Home Rental Assistance Program, the Affordable Housing Aid Program, the Local Housing Trust Fund, and the Greater Minnesota Infrastructure Grant Program, and also Lead Safe Homes. And I'm going to start with probably our biggest program. This program is funded by appropriations. It's $23 million annually, and also a sales tax that was created in the 7-county metro area. This program is really modeled after the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program, and Minnesota Housing is developing a formula that agencies and HRAs across the state of Minnesota can receive a direct allocation to their agency to expand their housing choice voucher program. This is estimated to create an additional 5,000 vouchers, which can be used as either project-based or tenant-based vouchers. And what that means is that an HRA can either decide to put all of that rental assistance into a current building, or they can give that rental assistance to a tenant who can shop or find their own rental unit. Right now, the agency is working on a program guide that's going to help us figure out how to roll out this program. As I mentioned, 5,000 new vouchers that will be shared across the state of Minnesota. And next slide. So our next program is Affordable Housing Aid, which is actually 3 different programs. This is also funded by state appropriations and also a metro sales tax. This is aid that is distributed directly to cities, counties, and tribes through the Department of Revenue. The funds don't pass through Minnesota Housing, but we're really here to help our local units of government figure out how they can use these funds that will best serve their communities. And I'm going to start with the local affordable housing aid. This was created to help metropolitan local units of government meet local housing needs through affordable housing development projects and support for organizations and individuals in maintaining stable and affordable housing. Sorry, Eric, if you would go one more. The 7-county metro area established a sales tax. It's a 1/4 cent sales tax that is being divided into 3 different ways. 50% of it is going to the counties in the 7-county metro area for the local affordable housing aid. 25% of it is going to cities in the metro area over a population of 10,000, and then 25% of it is going to the Bring It Home Rental Assistance Program. And Eric, if you want to go to the next slide. We also have a statewide affordable housing aid program. This was created basically for greater Minnesota. All 87 counties in Minnesota, as well as non-metro cities over a population of 10,000, are receiving direct aid from the Department of Revenue. This is appropriated funds that is an ongoing program, and Minnesota Housing, again, is really there to support our local communities. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what these programs are and what local units of government can do with these funds. So next slide. So in 2023, the city of Brainerd received $96,000, Cass County $112,000, Crow Wing County $157,000, Morrison $112,000, Todd $99,000, and Wadena $93,000. So again, in the 2023 legislative session, all of these programs that were within our department were really created to provide funding directly to local units of government. So when we're looking at Crow Wing County, the funds that the county received went to the HRA to increase their local housing trust fund, which has a wide variety of projects that can be funded through this. So these can be for emergency rental assistance. It can be used for financial support to nonprofit affordable housing developers, and really a wide range of housing activities that cities and counties can use these funds to increase the availability of housing. The city of Brainerd, for example, used their statewide affordable housing aid to support Habitat for Humanity in their increasing of affordable housing units. So the legislature really didn't want cities in the state of Minnesota with a population of less than $10,000 to be left out. As I mentioned, the statewide affordable housing aid and the local affordable housing aid programs are direct aid directly to counties and cities with a population of over 10,000. They didn't want the cities that were really small, those under 10,000, to be left out of that funding. So they created a program called the Tier 2 Small Cities Program. There's approximately $4.5 million that will be available to cities across the state of Minnesota that can apply for these funds to be used directly towards their housing projects that are much needed within their community. The other program that was created in the 2023 legislative session was local housing trust funds. Back in 2019, the legislature created this mechanism by which cities and counties could develop a local housing trust fund where local communities, local governments could add funds into a pool that could be used for a number of different housing activities: rental rehab, homeowner rehab, assistance with the development of new residential housing. But there was never any funding that was appropriated with the creation of that program. So in 2022 and in 2023, the legislature appropriated $5.8 million. These funds can be applied for from agencies like the Crow Wing County HRA to add to the funds that they've already allocated to their local housing trust fund. Again, these funds can be used on a wide variety of programs. You can use them on rehab, on rental rehab, owner-occupied rehab, the development of new single-family or multifamily units. And I'm sure Eric will talk a little bit more specifically about what they're doing with their local housing trust fund. The next program that was created in the 2023 legislative session is the Greater Minnesota Housing Infrastructure Grant Program. One of the things that we are hearing consistently is that the cost of infrastructure is sometimes really prohibitive in creating and developing new affordable housing. So the legislature appropriated $8 million that can be applied for things like roads, streets, sewers, curbs, gutters, water, wastewater, for those communities to help build those affordable housing units, whether it's multifamily or single family. Cities and counties can apply for up to $500,000 to help fund those infrastructure costs. And they can be used for $40,000 per lot for 1 to 4 units, $180,000 per lot for multifamily units, which is 5 or more, or $60,000 per lot on a manufactured housing program. The last program within our department is Lead Safe Homes. This is known as the Dustin Luke Shields Act, and it was named after a child who was poisoned by lead-based paint, not once, but twice. And so $4 million has been set aside. Those funds can be used for risk assessments and remediation of lead-based paint, for multifamily or single family. Really there to prioritize those areas with a high concentration of lead-based paint. I'm going to share this later, but here is a way that you can contact us, learn more about our programs. This is really high level. In our question and answers, I'm happy to get into more detail, but I thought I would keep at least this a broad stroke of what our programs are. And we can get into a lot more detail in our questions and answers on how these programs may be available to help Crow Wing County and the 5-county region in supporting your housing developments for affordable housing across the 5-county metro. If you scan the QR code, it's going to bring you right to our website. And we would encourage people to sign up for updates. As we build out these programs, we're continuing to provide updates on how people can access these resources. Before I step down and turn it over to Eric, one thing that I really do want to stress about our department and about the programs that we're administering. As I mentioned, 2023 was a big year for our state, for Minnesota housing, and for increasing the availability and the affordability of housing. One of the things that the legislature really recognized was that there are huge differences in the housing needs between Kitson County, Crow Wing County, Lake County, the Twin Cities Metro. Every community we know has a housing shortage. Every community we know has an aging housing stock. But the priorities for each community may range widely. So the legislature said, let's make sure that we are creating programs that's putting money into those communities that best know their housing market. You know what you need in your community to address your affordable housing needs, and these programs really target that. These programs were intended to be very broad, were intended to have a lot of different activities that you could do so that each community could decide what is needed within their community. Our department is here not only to roll out these very big programs, bringing home rental assistance, which is going to provide 5,000 housing choice vouchers to much needed households within the state of Minnesota. From infrastructure, when you are looking at developing new housing developments and the cost of infrastructure is so high that it's hard to make those projects work, these funds can help with that literal foundation, to housing trust funds that can really help a wide range of different activities, from rehab all the way up to development, and then down to the smallest piece, which could just be safe homes and homes that are safe from lead-based paint. So our programs really are a wide range. Our staff is here to make sure that we're available to you. We're helping you connect the dots. We are helping you figure out which one of these resources that you could best use to forward your housing needs within your community. Minnesota Housing is a huge agency that has over 45 programs. Our staff is here to help you navigate the waters of that. We have funding sources, but we also understand that this can be incredibly overwhelming for somebody especially new at doing affordable housing. So I leave this up on the screen for a while very intentionally. Our staff, again, is here to help you. We'll walk you through it. If we don't know the answers, we'll find the answers, and we can also help you connect with other communities that are struggling with some of the same issues. Recently, we've started holding webinars where we are asking communities to come together to share how they're using their funds. Eric Charpentier attended our webinar that we did just a couple of weeks ago and talked about how they're using the county's statewide affordable housing aid to increase their local housing trust fund, to increase that, to increase the affordability and the availability of housing. We will continue to do these webinars, and what we really like to do is when we sit down at this table and we hear your questions and we're able to really talk through some of these challenging issues that I know that you are all facing. So with that, I will end mine and turn it over to Eric. Thank you.
Drops the clicker right on cue, but that's okay, we don't need it. Well, thank you to the Rosenmeier Center for asking me to be here tonight, as you can see. And again, my name is Eric Charpentier. I am the Executive Director for the Brainerd HRA. That is a picture of our building. If you don't know where we're located, we are just on East River Road, right next to our wonderful North Star apartment building, which houses 162 individual housing units. But very timely to be in front of you talking about housing. as Jennifer touched on it, and everyone seems to be talking about it from a federal, national level, down to the state, down to the local level. Housing is incredibly important. We are finally seeing that conversation is taking off across the state, across the nation. We were fortunate enough to actually have the housing commissioner from Minnesota Housing up in our area today. We've got a housing deal going on up at Madden's right now for our housing officials. And Commissioner Ho was up here and really stressed that this is not just a state problem, it's not just a local problem, it is in the national forefront. One of the things that I took away from her introductory speech today was that housing has moved from a conversation of nice to have to a need to have issue. And we know that. We know that as a huge thing that we continue to struggle with in all of our communities. It's not just nice to have anymore, it's need to have. Becky introduced the problem in Minnesota, 100,000 households short. That's a lot. And that's putting it very mildly. In Crow Wing County, we are looking at a housing need, and you could also say shortage, based off of what our most recent housing study was, which was in 2020, of about 4,800 units across the housing spectrum. So we're not the 100,000 of the state, but 4,800 units in about a 15-year period is very significant. That's a lot of money. If we just averaged about $200,000 per door, which nobody's touching a brand new house for $200,000 anymore, you're still talking about $1 billion problem in Crow Wing County. So we love to see the dollars coming out to the state of $1 billion+ in one year, one biennium. But we know that need is much more. So much broader issue than what I can solve here tonight or what Jennifer can, but we are working on it. We're working on it from a local level. We heard about the state programs. I get to share with you how we're trying to implement those dollars and really try to leverage those dollars with what we've got locally. Feel like it's a little bit premature to think you all know what an HRA is. So give a little bit of background on that. An HRA, what are we? We're a Housing and Redevelopment Authority. We actually are a local unit of government. I'm not the city of Brainerd. I'm not Crow Wing County. We are component units of government. We are governed by state statute 469 for those of you that need some light reading at night. We are created by cities or counties. And we are the intent of what we do is to be the housing and redevelopment arm of the city or the county, because housing can be a hot button issue, as I'm sure we probably know. My job at the Brainerd HRA is kind of threefold. We also oversee the Crosby and the Crow Wing County HRA agencies through shared services agreements, so we are doing a lot of good work throughout the county and through a couple of our municipalities. Our mission statement on the Brainerd side is to provide affordable housing and redevelopment opportunities to strengthen our neighborhoods and community. I always joke that that's a really easy thing to solve, right? It's not. We know that. We know it takes resources. It takes creativity to try to get out to our partners and to get some opportunities to either develop redevelopment or help those folks that are out there already housing individuals that are our landlords or our builders. What kind of things can we do as HRAs? So we have some interesting powers that we can do. We can actually acquire and sell property. We do redevelopment projects. We can actually issue bonds and pay for some of our projects that way. We get to perform needs assessments to see what kind of things we need in our large multifamily units. We can operate and or acquire affordable housing, including federally assisted public housing. We do have about 203 units of those in the city of Brainerd proper. And we do administer the Section 8 program, the Housing Choice Voucher program. We do that county-wide with our agency. Some other things that we can do to try to help the housing. We can develop and administer housing rehab loan or grant programs. We can create interest reduction programs. We can create and administer tax increment financing districts, TIF. You've probably heard of that. Develop and administer down payment programs, housing development projects. We can create local housing trust funds with the help of our municipalities. So we do have a lot of tools in our toolbox to try to move the needle a little bit. But again, we are a fairly small agency. We'd love to do all of these things all of the time, but we also are limited on resources and limited on time and limited on money. What do we have in our portfolio? As I stated, we do own and operate 203 units of public housing. Photo there is of our North Star building. If you haven't been downtown or by the school, that is our 162 unit high rise built in the late 60s. Still going strong. We are very proud of that building. If you haven't ever walked through it, you want a tour, let me know. You wouldn't know that it was built in the late 60s, does not have shag carpeting. It is in good condition. And we do have capital dollars from HUD that allow us to keep pouring money into that, to keep them updated, to keep them relevant. And we want to make sure that asset stays here long-term in the city of Brainerd. Like I said, that houses 162 of our units. We do have scattered sites throughout the city. We do administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program, that Section 8 program for the county. We administer 325 vouchers. What that means is we let somebody that is income restricted and meets the guidelines, we will actually pay a portion of their rent so they can go out and rent on the open market. And as long as those rents fall within our guidelines, we can pay a portion of their rent, so they're not actually paying more than 30% of their gross income, so they are not cost burdened when they're trying to buy groceries, get the kids' clothes and things like that. Certainly a really good program, and that is the program that Minnesota Housing is standing up here for us as well, to add even more vouchers to our portfolio. We also own and operate Valley View Townhomes. That's a 20 unit or 18 units in West Brainerd that are market rate, but they are more affordable on that, and we own and operate that and make sure that those can stay in the affordable realm. Some other programs that we can do, you look at that house and say, probably not, right? I actually bought that house for the HRA and did that last year, and what we can do, we can buy these properties. This was a burned down house over on B Street in Northeast. We're able to buy that, and then through cooperation with the city of Brainerd, through the Brainerd EDA, we actually had some funds to knock that thing down. Obviously, it was a hazard with the caution tape around it. We can get that back to a buildable grade, and then the nice thing is we don't necessarily have to be the one to rebuild it. We've got local partners. The local Habitat for Humanity partnered with us and purchased that lot, and they are going to be building a house on that, I believe, in 2025. And very, very helpful or thankful for those opportunities that we can partner locally. With our limited budgets, we wouldn't be able to build this house. Kevin is able to come in with his group, actually build it for us. We know it's going to serve the demographic and the local housing needs that we have, and just couldn't be more thankful for those partnerships that make something like this be a nice, wonderful, beautiful single-family home on the back end of it. So we get to do those fun things from time to time. Those aren't the everyday thing, thankfully, but those are really impactful when we look at a picture like this and then can see a brand new home coming into that. We really, really enjoy seeing that. We do rehabilitation loans. We do that through a number of state partners and through our local housing trust fund. We utilize Minnesota Housing. We utilize Minnesota Deed. They've got a small cities development program. We've got our local housing trust fund. Through that housing study that we did in 2020, it said, hey, we need a lot of units, but we also need to make sure we don't lose units. And those 4,800 units that we need overall through the spectrum, and about 1,500 to 1,700 of those need to be in the workforce range. We also can't lose ones to decay like the slide before. So what we can do with our rehab loans is before and after, before upper right, after lower left, we get to do some projects to do safety and soundness. So we're talking, the windows, doors, roofing, plumbing, electrical. We can do those safety and soundness upgrades within, the amount of money that we have per loan, and you can come up with some pretty good results. Next slide is also going to show some rehab impact that I think shows it a little more starkly as far as the pre and the post. And so primarily those individuals that are getting these rehab loans might be on a fixed income. They might own their house completely outright, might have been there for 30, 40 years. They're on a fixed income, they're Social Security, retired, and might not have a lot of money to actually have a loan repayment. So these programs that we work with sometimes are forgivable loans if they stay in that house long term. Sometimes they're low to zero interest loans that when they're paid back, we're only asking that they get paid back once they sell the asset. So we're not adding to their debt burden that they likely can't afford, but we're able to keep that housing stock available for that next generation to go into. Tax forfeited property, that is another new one. Well, it's not a new one, but we've got some new guidance on that. Previously, we've got a hold or tax forfeited property hold policy that allows us, or did allow us, to convey tax forfeited properties to the HRA very, very cheaply from the county and from the state to the county to us for as low as $1, that we could get these units, or get these, in most cases, bare lots that have been lost through forfeiture over the years. We're able to get that into a developer's hands and actually build some housing on them. Really good for infill projects in the cities and municipalities that have that infrastructure built out there. But if you paid attention in the last year, the state of Minnesota actually was involved with a Supreme Court decision that didn't go favorably for the state. And this program is going to be impacted a little bit in the upcoming, at least probably 4 years. The state did get hit with about a $109 million lawsuit that they're going to have to pay out to some individuals. We're still going to have a tax forfeited property policy out there. It's going to look a little bit different, but it was a really, really effective way for us to get some of these lots into the private or developers' hands for a pretty nominal price to get some things built. And as we look at development, that's really one of the main ways that we can affect how affordability is baked into these homes, is if we can get property into developers' hands for a nominal amount, they're able to pass those savings along. This is always an exciting one, a redevelopment project that we've worked through on the Crow Wing County HRA side. Jennifer knows all about this project: Brainerd Oaks, Serene Pines, Delmar Estates. A whole lot of tax forfeited properties that were sitting vacant for a long, long time prior to me coming to the HRA. A lot of work was done by Jennifer and her team to get agreements between the city of Brainerd, Crow Wing County, the two HRAs, to say, hey, how can we affect this, and got some developer interest in that, and ultimately ended up selling about 112 lots to a developer. You can see up on the screen, the HRA negotiated a sales price to the developer for about a little over $900,000. Negotiated with the city of Brainerd to waive a lot in special assessments, which a portion did get paid back to the city. It's not that they were on the hook for everything. They got the land deeded from the state to the county and then to the HRA, and we had a development agreement to build out a lot of single-family houses. The great thing is this happened in March of 2017. We've sold 103 lots to the developer already. They're anticipating to be built out in the next 2 years, I think at least a little bit ahead of schedule. And we're talking pretty impactful housing. These weren't low-income housing, single-family housing. They were market rate. Because of the tax forfeiture, we didn't have to ensure that they were necessarily going to meet a certain metric of affordability. But the developer that came in on the second end of it, level contracting, really has tried to keep affordability in there. These are just some pictures of some of the homes. These are the actual homes over in the 3 developments. And these are the kind of projects that are really, really impactful to not only the neighborhoods, but they're incredibly impactful for the tax base, for sharing that tax burden that we all love to pay, right? By building all of these houses, they are adding to that tax base for all of us. So we don't maybe have to pay quite as much a piece of that pie. As you can see, at the beginning of this project, the sales prices were in that $165,000 range. Man, I wish we were still there. We're not. We're in that typically $300,000 to $350,000. Some of the other 2 developments, Delmar Estates and Serene Pines, are a little bit higher priced, and that's where you see that upwards of $425,000. We'd love to see them cheaper, but we're thrilled with the amount of units that are being built out there, and just very, very thankful that we're able to get through that, and kudos to everybody that was involved on the front end of that. Probably didn't ever think it was actually going to get done, but we've got some really, really cool progress to see that. Talk a little bit about local housing trust funds. Again, this is for my Crow Wing County HRA hat. A little bit of history on this. Again, my predecessor was very instrumental in getting this done. County administrative staff, county commissioners, one of those that are here today, were very instrumental in saying, hey, what could you do with this newfangled housing trust fund that the state is allowing? And so a lot of foresight in the county in standing this up and also funding it. So a lot of HRAs across the state are creating these things right now, but not all of them are funding them. And so that's kudos to our county and our county commissioners for actually believing in it enough to let me levy some of your tax dollars to do some really cool projects and to be forward thinking about that. That got stood up in 2020, again, very strange time period as we all recall. Through COVID, we started our projects to try to get some programs going. We've got 3 main programs that we run through our Housing Trust Fund: down payment assistance, rehab, both single-family owner-occupied and rental, and then we do some new development. Pictures up on our screen have everything to do with some of the projects that we're looking at funding or having already been funded. We worked on an apartment complex over in Baxter with some funding through the Housing Trust Fund, and we're looking at anytime development is involved and multifamily is involved, it's expensive. We all know that. The picture in the middle, upper right or upper center, is a 64-unit apartment complex, lofts on Novotny, that was our first very large influx of cash into a project. We think it is a large investment, but to that development, it's only about 7%. So we invested about $1 million as a loan. These are loan dollars into that project and infused that. And in return, we're actually getting about 60% of their units. We get to control where their price points are on that rent. You might ask, why on God's earth would any landlord, any developer want to give up 60% of their rents for a 7% stake in a loan that they still have to pay back? Some of the great things that we're doing with that trust fund are we've actually given that loan at 0% interest. And a lot of people think that might be a little bit crazy, but I think it's forward thinking enough to allow a developer to say, yeah, we'll still allow you to control some of our rents. 60%, I think it's a lot, while we have those funds before we pay them back. Really impactful, and we're talking, they're still market rate prices, but a portion of them are capped at 115% of our area median income. That number gets told to us by HUD every year. So we're always gonna, while they have our dollars, we're gonna have that certain amount of units at 115% of AMI, and that's gonna allow our workforce to rent there. We've got another portion of those rents that are reserved for those at 80% of AMI and lower. So we've got a nice little incentive to get these dollars out on our end, and they, the developer and the owner, have a good incentive to keep our dollars because it's at 0%. And if anyone's paid attention to the bank rates lately, 0% is very attractive. We do have some pushback on that, and we're certainly receptive to that, both at the county level and our county HRA board level. I think it is still a really good hook into getting some units developed, and it's something that isn't being done everywhere else. Bottom left is a picture of the Thrifty White building, if you know where that is. We continue to try to and push for some redevelopment there. Really exciting project that we're hoping to get off the ground would be a multi-use building with 5 units of commercial on the ground floor and upwards of 78 units of housing down there. Actually going to be a little bit even cheaper rents than the Baxter project. We'll be utilizing 8 different funding sources, one of which would be TIF, that has been approved by our Brainerd City Council about a year ago, which is really, really wonderful for that project because that is a $19 million project, very expensive. Some Housing Trust Fund dollars have been appropriated if they do get their funding that they're currently waiting on from Minnesota Housing. The city of Brainerd is offering to waive SAC and WAC to about the tune of about $250,000. So there are a lot of different partners that are involved here just to try to get that redeveloped. It's not easy. We're still not to the starting line on it. We're probably as close as we've been in, what, Jennifer, 8 years? So these things take time, but they can be very impactful. And if we can get that redevelopment project off the ground in the city of Brainerd, I think it'll be transformational. We saw a good influx of new commercial tenants coming in a few years ago. We want to continue to capitalize and encourage that investment. We're super thrilled that Breckens is coming downtown, and we're hoping to add that as another cornerstone of downtown. Resource utilization. So we talk about leverage. Leverage is a lovely buzzword. We know that the state is giving us, through the statewide affordable housing aid, about $157,000. We love that. That's great. We are putting that, the county has allowed us to put that into our county housing trust fund, but that is a drop in the bucket. We know that, but we can take that $157,000 and use our $400,000 that we're going to hopefully fund into the trust fund from levy dollars, and now that pool gets to about $540,000. And we add in maybe some of these housing trust fund match dollars that the state is allowing us to apply for, and we start to multiply that, and then we can leverage maybe 800,000, $1 million, $1.3 million into these larger projects and still affect it. We know that we're never going to be the housing developer. We don't have enough money for it. We just can't do it. But we can be a lever. We can be a portion of it. And that's how we're trying to utilize the great funds that are coming in. And we are searching and scratching for all of those opportunities the best that we can. We still need to levy dollars. That's never fun. It's never fun for anybody. But we appreciate the trust that the public and the councils and the commissioners do put into our hands to do this work. It's not easy work. We want to make sure that we've got affordability for everybody. We know we've got a portion of our portfolio is for the lowest of the income earners. That's our public housing portfolio. But we know it's a spectrum, and we try to affect both the lowest of the low and really that missing middle, that workforce is really a new focus as well. Talked about some of our strong partnerships, intergovernmental cooperation. Sometimes sounds a little bit of an oxymoron, but it's true. We do work together. We can get things done. And so that's cities, that's EDAs, economic development authorities, housing authorities, local development organizations, developers, and more. They're all imperative to the success of the community and to this housing issue that we know we're all facing. Not only low-income housing or workforce housing is needed, we also need attention to be paid to patio homes, to duplexes, single-family, multifamily. We need that spectrum. Ben Winchester, one of the University of Minnesota Extension's kind of professors, he does a lot of talks about housing. And you've likely hopefully seen some of his information in the dispatch. I know recently he was speaking in Wilmer, and he'll be speaking in Baxter October 23rd. He talks about, maybe not gearing everything towards the workforce housing, that maybe that's not all we need. I would counter that we do still need the whole housing spectrum. And I agree with a lot of what Ben says, and he's got really good information, a lot of good data. But just knowing that we need 4,800 housing units in the county, I know it's not just patio homes. I know it's the spectrum. And so we all look at these from different lenses and different opportunities. From the HRA's perspective, we're trying to touch as many, parts of that spectrum that we can with the limited amount of funding that we have. And I will then lead us hopefully into a question and answer period. Lovely picture again, kind of an aerial of the other side of our wonderful apartment complex. Again, very, very thankful that you guys afforded me some time to speak. Hopefully there's some good questions, and we'll move on to the next portion.
Thank you.
Okay, if I could.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Eric and I really kind of hope to share with you today is the state's programs, which are wide and vast, right? And so went through a lot of those programs and how it is applied at the local level. So a lot of the funding sources that I talked about at Minnesota Housing are actually being used to make a difference right here in Crow Wing County. So I guess I just wanted to set the stage with that. Thanks, Becky.
My question is either for Eric or Jennifer. I recently read the fact that in the state tax code, there is a provision that allows for a tax credit of up to $1,000 that if you give it instead to the local Habitat for Humanity, it's a credit against your state income taxes that you don't know where all that money is going. Does the Brainerd Habitat for Humanity have that same opportunity?
We do, and we actually have our Habitat for Humanity director here, Kevin Pelkey. He could certainly answer that question. In short, Mr. Runsell, yes, they have that opportunity, and it's not just $1,000. It can be compounded a little bit higher, and I'll let Kevin answer that.
Thank you for the opportunity to answer that, and I just want to say thank you to Eric and Jennifer. What a gift we have to have such compassionate leadership in this sphere. So, yeah, the state housing tax credit is an incredible program, one of a kind in the country. We need to take advantage of it. We need to promote this. We need to get people to use it so that in 6 years, when it's scheduled to sunset, we can petition the state legislature to renew it and expand it. We've received our first contribution. It's on its way through the netherworld in the system, where a local contributor, in exchange for making his tax payments, received his voucher that he will be able to use till it's gone. And there is a maximum cap of $2 million that anyone can make into that per year, but the minimum is $1,000. So anyone with a Minnesota state tax liability is eligible to make a contribution as long as it's a minimum of $1,000, and that voucher is good for up to 10 years or till it's gone.
And I can add to that a little bit. So this is a program that is being administered through Minnesota Housing. We can collect up to $7 million annually. As Kevin mentioned, a minimum of $1,000, a maximum of $2 million. Those funds that are contributed through the state tax credit program can be either a specific project identified that they would like their tax funds to go directly to, or it can go into a pool of funds that will be administered by Minnesota Housing that, again, will address some of the most important needs across the state of Minnesota. I think the most exciting thing about this program, it is new, it is unique, it is different. No other state is doing this type of program, is that you can target your funds to a project that you are passionate about or that is important to you.
From what I'm hearing you say, let's say I give $5,000 to that fund, I can use it as a direct reduction in my income tax?
That is correct. Yep. And there are staff at Minnesota Housing that know this program inside and out, and they'll walk you through exactly the process on how that works.
Who would I contact?
I will give that contact to you. Her name is Chrissy Mills, and I will make sure that you have her contact information.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So complete change of topic. So I know there was talk about setting up something different with the housing voucher program, aside from the federal one, a more Minnesota-based that would make it more palatable for landlords. Is there any progress on that?
So that is called the Bring It Home Rental Assistance Program, and that's what I was referring to earlier. It is a state program that will provide about 5,000 vouchers statewide. Every HRA in the state of Minnesota is going to get an allocation of Bring It Home Rental Assistance, and then each HRA will decide what they're going to do with their funds. So the Brainerd HRA representing Crow Wing County HRA will get that funding, and there are 3 options. They can run that program exactly like they run their Housing Choice Voucher program right now. Or they can take their Housing Choice Voucher program and the things that they like to do and continue that, or they can make changes to their Housing Choice Voucher program for things that they don't like. For example, inspections could be voluntary on a statewide housing choice voucher program. That's one option that I know HRAs are looking at. Their third option is that they can take those funds and they can create a brand new program. It just has to be used for rental assistance. And then maybe for those of you who don't know what a rental assistance program is, it generally works this way. Somebody gets a voucher, they go find a unit from a private landlord. The landlord, as long as they agree to accept it, the tenant moves in. The tenant pays 30% of their gross adjusted income towards rent to the landlord, and then the agency or the HRA would pay the difference between their income and the full rent. So the Bring It Home Rental Assistance Program is going to provide HRAs with a lot more flexibility to really target the needs within their community and with the rental needs and the affordability within their community.
So what I'm hearing Jennifer say is that if there are interested landlords that might want to have input into what would make their lives a little bit easier, that they should contact their local HRA so that when we apply for Jennifer's new program, for the state's program for vouchers, that we can have some flexibility that might entice. The biggest thing that I take away from the new voucher program at the state level, there's trepidation across the state that says, and the great thing about Crow Wing County is we don't have a problem using the vouchers that we have allotted. We have more need than what is out there. A lot of our counterparts across the state say, we don't know where we're going to find the people to take these vouchers or where they're going to rent. That hasn't been an issue in Crow Wing County, so as we are looking to supplement the federal program with the state vouchers, we are looking for ways to target units that we haven't been able to get into before. And there is flexibility, as Jennifer stated on the state side, that we can implement into our plan to maybe make that palatable to open up some more units for us to utilize these. What the state doesn't want to do by any means is kind of pick off the federal programs. They want to see that flourish as well as see this new program flourish. So that's the opportunity on the local level for us to manipulate a little bit to gear it towards what our landlords need.
One of the things we talk about all the time with the HRAs who are going to be using these funds is we don't want to set them up for a good voucher and a bad voucher. So how can we help support them in creating a program that really enhances their program?
Hey, thanks for all the great information tonight. I'm Kathy from the Morrison County Habitat Affiliate in Little Falls. Just a quick question on the Tier 2 cities. Are you notifying cities about the RFP? When is it coming out? I was at City Hall yesterday in Little Falls and talking to the finance manager, and she's looking at me like deer stung in headlights. And I know she's new, but will she get that information? She goes, well, does your habitat want all the money? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to be a hog, but...
the answer is yes.
Yes, I will take it. But anyway, so I see the max is $25,000, and what is that going to be utilized for?
So the Tier 2 cities, I talked earlier about this affordable housing aid umbrella. You have the local affordable housing aid, you had the statewide affordable housing aid that's direct appropriations. The Tier 2 program is for those cities under 10,000 in population. We are working right now on what that program will look like. The statute says that the minimum grant amount is $25,000. That is not the maximum grant amount. This program will be available to all cities in greater Minnesota with a population of under 10,000. We do expect a lot of applications. So to answer your question, absolutely. I think Habitat, and you see Lakes Area Habitat for Humanity is receiving the statewide affordable housing funds from Brainerd to do exactly what you're looking for, and that is exactly the purpose of the Tier 2 programs. Let's not let those small communities like Little Falls be left out of the direct allocation, and if Habitat can use those funds to increase the number of housing units in Little Falls, I would say absolutely work with the city of Little Falls and prepare to submit an application. We expect that application to be coming out. I'm this fall, late fall, early winter. How people get notified, I showed that screen. We have a sign up for email alerts. As soon as that RFP is released, we will make sure that we send something out. We are also working with the Small Cities Association as well as the League of Minnesota Cities, who's going to help us deliver those that message as well.
And listening to you and you're talking about funds, you're talking about a very substantial need, and you really don't have the funding, and government probably can't close the gap. But I'm hearing that there's about a need of about 5,000 units in Crow Wing County, so there's tremendous demand. So my question is, what is stopping private developers from satisfying that demand? If there's that kind of demand out there, why aren't private developers out there having a field day, bringing in their, if people want to buy these things, why aren't they being built?
Very, very good question. Kind of a 2 or 3 part answer, I would say. Number one, if you go back all the way to kind of the recession, we lost a lot of our building for a number of years. The building just slowed down to a halt. And so normally through the build cycle, we're going to have X amount of units built per year. That didn't happen for a number of years. It's come back, and we have had a good amount of developer interest in the Brainerd-Baxter and throughout the county. We are catching up, but I would say that we're not eclipsing the need right now. Case point, an example of how not saturated the market is right now. That Lofts in Novotny that I spoke about, and those 64 units, before they opened up in April of this year, 78% of those units were pre-leased. By month 1, end of month 1, it was 89% leased, end of month 2, fully leased. 64 units, that developer who was not from the area was hopeful for a lot less. They were not looking for anywhere near that by year 1. And so we see this pent-up demand. The builders are here. They are producing units. We're not at a saturation level yet. I would say that we are still on pace to keep going and catch up on that. The private sector is going to take care of a lot of the non-affordability required units, and lake homes, those are still going up. Those didn't stop. There's that side of the market that will continue to be there. When we look at our housing study, we're looking at more of that affordability gap. That's where those developers need a little bit of a nudge to get going, and so we look at really 1,500 to 1,700 units of what we're trying to utilize to help entice those developers to go. So it's not maybe as big of that problem, Jennifer.
The other thing I would add to that, too, is we have a shortage of developers. We have a shortage of builders. We have a shortage of people in the trades, plumbers, electricians, HVAC. Thank you, CLC. Staples Campus, I know, does a lot of that. And the cost of construction is the same in Crow Wing County, essentially, as it would be in the Twin Cities Metro. But in the Twin Cities Metro, they can charge a lot more for rent. So when they can charge more for rent, it makes it a much more attractive place to develop housing, whether it's single family, multifamily. One of the things hopefully you heard in some of the programs that I was talking about is a lot of greater Minnesota, greater Minnesota, greater Minnesota. I think really what has been recognized is exactly what I said. Developers can make a lot more money in the cities than they can make up here. Let's make sure that we are focusing some of our funds in greater Minnesota. And how can communities use some of the resources to leverage other funds? How can we work together as a community to build our trades, to increase our construction, to entice developers to want to come up and build? Some of them could be local developers, but we see our local developers, they're busy.
So I'm hearing a lot about like enticing and attracting developers and landlords to these programs. I guess if you could just talk a little bit about sort of the other side of that. So like with your program where you were saying you have control over 60% of the rent, or with the housing choice vouchers, what kind of safeguards are there or stopgaps for once that program ends, them just jacking those prices right back up?
So I will go from the housing trust fund side of it. So as our staff and our board have looked at the long-term affordability of these units, number one, again, we want the units to be built, and that is a priority for us kind of in the near term. So we're very, very happy if those units get built. They pay us back if they want to early, and then they are free from any stipulation on where the rents are. We still get those units built. And so we're hopeful that if they want to increase those rents, that will free up other maybe older units that will then be more affordable. We need the units. There might be some point into the future where that is a tipping point where we have to revamp our programs, but we don't see that as an urgent need. On the housing choice voucher side of it, or the state bring it home voucher side of it, the good thing is we believe that's here to stay. We don't, from a HUD perspective, the voucher program is much cheaper for them to infuse public dollars into than the public housing side of it was. Because our public housing is expensive, it has to be repaired, federal dollars are on the line for that. On the voucher side, that really flips to the landlord, the owner of those units, to keep those up. And so I think that's going to be a long-term into perpetuity. I would not anticipate seeing the voucher side go away. And on the state side, that is built into base, which is an important thing that certainly Jennifer can expound on.
One of the biggest funding sources there is right now for the construction of affordable rental housing is a program called the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. Minnesota Housing provides low-income housing tax credits to developers. One of the safeguards that we put into our low-income housing tax credit developments is a 30-year affordability requirement. Some of them now are even going to 40 years. The syndicator, the one who's getting the tax credits, will get that tax credit for 15 years. But when they enter into an agreement with Minnesota Housing, they're agreeing to keep it affordable for 30. What I've seen, been in this field for just a couple of years, I have seen projects that are 30-year tax credit deals that come due after 30 years. They need rehab. So then they want more funds for rehab, and then we enter into another 30-year contract. I've seen that several times in my career.
We've got a few of those that are coming due here and having those discussions right now, and so we hope that those will continue in perpetuity. But again, on the Housing Trust Fund side, we just want those units to be built, knowing that likely there'll be an enticement there for, we actually put those out there for about 20 years. That's the term limit. They can certainly pay us back earlier if they choose. We don't think that's going to be a real attractive thing.
So I have about 30 questions, but I'll leave it limited to
Next.
a comment and a question. To Lauren's question, 5,000 units of absence is both rental and single-family owned, occupied, right?
The whole spectrum.
And the reason that there isn't anything being delivered on a certain scale of the single-family is there's no money to be made in it. So people are bailing out on it because it's costing too much to build. You got to go where the money is, right? And so that is the piece of the puzzle where money needs to flow into, in my opinion. And so there's my question. What can we all do, knowing that this was really one-time money from a state surplus that got carved out? 1.3 is something we should celebrate. But if we need 5,000 units in Brainerd at $1 billion in Crow Wing County and multiply that by 87, what can we do to make sure the legislature doesn't put let up on the gas and continue to fuel that need?
Yeah, that's a big question, Kevin. And I wish I had a magic wand or a money tree. I guess I'll say a couple of things. Eric mentioned Commissioner Ho was Eric and I were at a conference today, and Commissioner Ho gave the address. Commissioner Ho is Commissioner of Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. And what she said was that in 2023, she was telling everybody that we should go big. We had a $17 billion surplus, and of that, $1.3 billion went into housing. It's great. It's one-time money, almost all of it, with the exception of Bring It Home, statewide affordable housing aid, and local affordable housing aid, but that goes down significantly. What I heard Commissioner Ho say today was, let's keep telling the legislature to go big. We are never, I'll give Bring It Home, for example. We calculated the need for the Bring It Home rental assistance program across the state of Minnesota in order to house all of the people who need rental assistance to make their housing affordable. It would cost us $163 million annually. So we're getting, about 40 million of that. It's drop in the bucket. But it's continuing to leverage, to find ways to leverage. Talk to your local officials, talk to your representatives. I wish I had a better answer, Kevin. It's a great question.
I think from my seat, again, yes, the leverage is huge. Try to utilize as many programs as we can to be creative. Brainerd Oaks, Serene Pines, Delmar Estates was creative. That was not something that had been seen around here at all, and that has created, or will create, roughly 112 single-family homes that, unfortunately, the housing prices are going up throughout that term, but still a great way to get some units built. Talk to your local legislatures, talk to the state if you can, but it's not popular. We all know that taxes are not popular. Nobody wants to be taxed more, unless it's affecting you, right? And if you have a personal connection to it, those are the easier calls to make because you have that passion for it. We have passion for this because this is the careers we've chosen. We know we're probably not going to solve this. Wish we could, but we're going to do our darn best to affect it, to move that needle with our partners, with our county, with habitats, with our landlords. We're going to do our best to move it, but the long-term answer, just keep asking and keep pushing.
I would like to just piggyback off of what he asked, because I'm both huge supporters of your guys's. So the lofts on Novotny would not have been possible without the HRA's $1 million contribution. That developer barely made his pro forma. And when you look at that unit and you say, okay, well, how are you supposed to develop then workforce housing, a percentage of workforce housing? So not only now are you decreasing the rents, but you're not changing the costs of the build. And I will say that the work that you guys do is critical, and you guys have done an amazing job, but how we can help is that when a developer needs TIF, show up to that meeting and support. Go to the county commissioner meetings because they are not giving the HRA enough money to help subsidize. And what happens is, I know there's an elected official here, I'm also an elected official, I know what happens when decisions are made. The people who don't want it are the loudest people in the room, and they will show up and they will tell them not to do it, and we need more people to show up at our counties and in our cities when we're looking at TIF, when we're looking at lowering SAC and WAC fees, when we're looking at, giving the HRA money. So we do have that ability, but we have to be that voice, because otherwise the only voices in the room in our own communities are the ones that are saying, no, we don't want them here. So we have to be louder than them, and that's the only way that we're going to change this.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm just curious what you're hearing from the local employers in the area about some of these programs. Are you getting support from them? We know, like you said before, taxes are expensive, but indirectly, if there's affordable housing for their workforce, our local employers have to be benefiting from this, even though it's costing us all from a taxpayer's perspective.
Yeah, wonderful point, wonderful question. Mayor Zierden, thank you for those comments too. Local employers, again, anecdotally, I haven't personally gone out and done a study on this, but certainly our partners through Bladeck and Creedy, they do talk to our local businesses. They hear the need. They do know that these units that are coming online are beneficial and helpful. And again, we look at trying to partner. You look at Perham is a great example of a local business community that actually thrives and puts money into some housing projects for their staff because they know how beneficial it is. That is something that is certainly a wish list of mine, to be able to work with our local businesses to try to more or less fundraise for some of these projects. We haven't been there yet. That is something that is on the list, but it is very beneficial. You look at the county makeup and how many, just medical campuses that we have, and we know these are good paying jobs. We have a lot of need for that workforce, and recruitment is such a big issue, even for Bladeck with Mike Bjerkens' group. If he recruits someone into a mid-management or higher level area and they can't find a place to live, they're not getting that hire, that recruit. So it's very impactful. The business community is hearing this. I do believe that. There's more work to do to try to drum up some support if we can get there to hopefully have some of that.
The Local Housing Trust Fund, one of the things that we are really encouraging local units of government to do, and it is required under that program, is to leverage local funds. One of the ways that cities and counties can leverage those funds is to be talking to local employers. I think Eric gave a great example of Perham. If you ever have a chance, go take a look at what they're doing. Their employers really got involved in supporting housing needs within their community.
Thank you, Becky. Bill, Morrison County Habitat for Humanity. There's some funds available there, and the perspective I have is the funds are for building. How about for purchasing a lot to put the house on or the apartment building? Is there money in that particular legislation that's available for that?
Yes. The Tier 2 program, the statewide affordable housing aid program, and the local housing trust fund all can be used for the purchasing of lots.
Okay, so I would be remiss if I didn't chime in to agree with Mayor Zierden. Please do. I'm Tiffany Stingline. I'm on the Brainerd City Council, and I love it when we hear from people to tell us what to do. Sometimes it feels like we're making choices in a vacuum. So please do let us know. We've done some things in Brainerd. We've got some SAC and WAC fees that we have waived. We did approve at the TIF district. I also don't have a money tree. If I did, this wouldn't be a problem. We just last night voted to reduce the requirements for garages in Brainerd, hoping that will bring down some of those building costs and help our builders and developers and Habitat for Humanity build projects in a more economically efficient way. What else can we do that doesn't cost money?
Councilmember Stingline, thank you. I think Brainerd has done a lot of really great things. Form-based zoning, right? Being more flexible. Being pro-developer, listening to your developers. Being an elected official is a tough job. You have tough jobs. Half the people are going to love what you do, the other half are going to hate what you do. But those incentives, Serene Pines, Delmar Estates, and Brainerd Oaks, waiving of those assessments was a really, really tough decision. The Brainerd Council took that approach and waived them, which created 112 new housing units. Those are things that cities can do
that don't cost anything. It's going to reduce your budget. Sack and whack is another great thing, right? Reducing sack and whack fees. But developers, that is a developer incentive that reduces budgets but doesn't cost anything.
And just kind of expound on the impact that again, Oaks, Serene Pines, Delmar Estates is doing to not just the city of Brainerd, but countywide of building that tax base. That 112 approximate lots, when they were in forfeiture, were estimated market value of just over $1 million. With the projects that have been completed, and again, the county records lag by about a year. I did the calculation this year, so you're looking at probably 2023 numbers. That tax base right now is up to, gosh, I have to go look at it. It's upwards of around 80 million. No, sorry, not that much. 28 million in tax base that estimated market value is for those single family homes right now, bringing in roughly a little over $250,000 in local property taxes. So we talk about building the tax base, the good benefits that come out of this, the Lawson-Novotny day one, because that does not have TIF to it, is adding $80,000 to the county tax rolls first year. So it is a generator of revenue for our local municipalities. It does sting sometimes maybe on the front end if you're not getting sack and whack or things like this, but it is impactful. It does help when we talk about the Laurel Street project that we're working on and having 8 different entities that need to try to put money in to make it even get to the starting line. These are complex development issues. Having some forward thinking, or at least receptiveness to different ways of thinking on your municipal boards is really key. And as Mayor Zierden said, speak up. If you like the project, you think it's going to be good, please let your councilors and commissioners know about it. It will build, I think, trust with what we do, so we can continue to ask for at least level funding, or maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit. It just depends on the year. You know, our jobs as staff sometimes are very difficult too, because we try to ask and put forward what we believe is needed, and sometimes that's not the support that we have, and that's okay. We understand that. We're going to still do the best that we can as staff to move that needle, but it's not maybe one thing, not one silver bullet.
I wanted to say something about existing homes, especially I've built homes, I've built apartments, and I'm looking at tax increment, almost being forced to look at it, do some of the projects I want to do. Well, tax increment can encourage building of new projects, but that money doesn't really come back to the local government for a generation and a half, 2 generations. Most of us will be dead before taxes are realized for that project that we build, whatever it may be on tax increment. One of the things I've been finding is a lot of my property values, because of this shortage, even though I'm not selling on my properties, the values are going up tremendously, which means my taxes go up tremendously, which means my rents have to go up tremendously to support these. A lot of times when you build properties with tax increment, current properties can no longer compete. And as we look at these different projects that we want to do, we need to look at possibly some tax reform that gets non-homestead properties into a tax situation where they're not taxed out of their business. You know, we are reducing the number of properties that are used for rent, which again provides housing, because our costs are going up. And we look at cost of taxes going up 25% a year because of the values. You add that the cost of the utilities, the insurance, all these different kind of things. I understand it's painful for me to tell people I got to raise your rent this much just to stay even, or even go down on what we're doing. I'm finding it harder to get funds, this kind of thing, and I'm wondering if there's any projects basically set up where we can lower the taxes of the existing properties. Every time we do a tax increment financing project, all those taxes that would have gone for paying for their fire protection, their police protection, water, sewer, this kind of thing, all gets shifted onto the existing owners who now are subsidizing their competition, but also subsidizing their own going out of business. And as we look at the good benefits of building these things, we're also putting other people out of business that are already providing these things. Just a thought.
Dave, I don't know of any tool that's there for existing properties. I don't know that I've ever even heard that conversation being had, and maybe it's something you would want to raise with your legislator. I think that would probably be the place to go to consider something like that. What I will say about tax increment financing, and frankly, we could sit here for 3 days and talk about tax increment financing because it is that complicated. TIF projects always have to pass what's referred to as a but-for test. And but for TIF, that development would not occur. And so what happens with TIF is that the property value gets frozen at it where it is today, and then the increment is what is above where the development was before it started, right? So I guess I just say that kind of as a little education for TIF. But for the TIF, that development wouldn't have happened, and that tax would have stayed the way that it was before the development.
I do have a question, actually, because Brainerd and Baxter, obviously it's more populated, you hook up to city sewer water. Where we are, we have a situation that we don't have the infrastructure. So if you go out to Pequot Lakes or Nisswa or Breezy, Merrifield, our issue is how do we connect to city sewer water? And one of the projects that I hope to see done is the Landis building. The Landis building is 57,000 square feet. I'm working with a private developer right now. The problem is that it's in Pequot. The ability to get city sewer water there is not going to happen. But there is an opportunity to connect to Breezy's system. The problem is Breezy's system most likely will not be able to handle that. So basically what they're asking of Breezy Point taxpayers is to pay for an upgrade to a system that isn't in their city because the school is there. What is available to us, and I'm not speaking on behalf of like the council, but what is available in these types of situations where it's not as black and white because we don't have necessarily the infrastructure for these developers because there's plenty of space and land that can be developed a little bit outside of Brainerd and Baxter. What is available?
I guess what I'm going to say, Mayor, is we're really here as housing experts, and I know you're talking about a commercial property. I would really encourage you to reach out to Tyler Glenn at the Brainerd Lakes Area Economic Development Corporation and maybe see if he has some advice. Oh, it is. I thought it was for commercial.
So, infrastructure. Jennifer's group does have a small infrastructure budget. She referenced it $8 million for as many applicants that can come across the state that need infrastructure from the municipalities. And Commissioner Ho today did speak of if you had an unlimited budget, what would you want as housing professionals to help affect the housing? That is one of the #1 cost prohibitive issues for any municipality or any housing authority to try to build out more housing. That is what I would wish for in response to Commissioner Ho, is that we need more money for infrastructure for our municipalities to access, because it is cost prohibitive for your cities to put that infrastructure in ahead of any development. And that's where I think the state, hopefully, if we can garner enough interest and enough support, can help our municipalities locally to move that needle. That's not going to be a very easy fight because infrastructure is really, really hard to fund. But I think a start is happening with Minnesota Housing. They've got a very small budget right now, but I'm assuming we're going to see that money go away very quickly because that need is so prevalent in anything we do. We're trying to do something to tack on to the Brainerd Oaks development with an outlot that we own, and to get a small road in about the length of a house is about $180,000 to $200,000. That's just for roadway to get in there. And that won't go unless we get, hopefully, some access to infrastructure dollars for the city, for that developer. So absolutely hear you on that. It is so cost prohibitive to build that out, and the municipalities are not going to do it because their constituents will not typically allow that. So if we can get some support at the state level, that is the first step. And I think Jennifer's program that they're rolling out is a first step that hopefully we can compound on and talk with our locals to say, hey, this works and this is needed.
Cities are eligible for $500,000. I do expect this program to be overprescribed. It is, out of all the calls and emails I get, it's almost always the infrastructure grant program. $8 million, $500,000 maximum per city. My guess is that the infrastructure cost for the development you're talking about is much more than that.
It wouldn't be a freebie for one to expand the sewer system. It's more of just, can we handle that? When is the deadline?
We anticipate requests for proposals for that program to come out early winter, probably 6 weeks to apply, with awards being made early 2025 for 2025 construction.
Just a comment. First of all, to thank both of you for an outstanding performance tonight. It was well done, and the information was great. But two comments I wanted to make is, I think the best decision the 2023 Minnesota legislature made was when they created the tax credit program, where it gives it's like school vouchers or school choice. It gives taxpayers the chance to direct money that would otherwise go to the general fund that they might not approve of, where that money is going to go and can go to a very needed program such as Habitat for Humanity. So that hopefully that program will continue in big measure in the future. The second comment I wanted to make, Eric, I don't know, you probably are aware of this, I'm not sure the audience is, but that icon building you have up there, the senior housing built in '68, we got to honor the memory of Vice President Hubert Humphrey of Minnesota, who was the person who cut through the red tape in Washington. The local political leadership here in Brainerd notified him that they desperately needed it, and he asked Secretary of then Housing, Charles Weaver, for the money, and he got it instantly and brought it back to Brainerd, and I think he came to Brainerd to make that announcement, but at the time that building was an icon building in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, and we are so lucky to have that building and to keep it affordable and to have that available to us. And again, if anybody wants a tour of that building, please let me know. It does not look like it was built in 1968, and we take a lot of pride. Jennifer took a lot of pride. She has passed that along to me to make sure that I am the keeper of that for the moment, and we love that asset here in Brainerd.
Thank you so much. We all learned a lot. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Oh, thank you.
I had it on my city computer, but not.
I'll come this way, please.
I'm just going to go say bye to my